Happy 4th of July, everybody. And because it is the 4th of July, if you hear any fireworks sound or a loud boom sound in the background, I do apologize for that because it's that time of the year and it's that time of the day where, fireworks are started to shoot off. Although, actually, it's not really that time of the day yet. It's still daytime right now. Wait until when we get to nightfall when people are going to start shooting fireworks. And hence, that's why I'm not doing the review for the 4th of July midweek games. Because if I do the review after the Galaxy versus TFC game, which ends at 9:30, and that is usually the time when it's at the peak of where people are shooting off fireworks, yeah, that is not going to be a great time. Like, you're going to hear like non-stop fireworks in the background as I am doing the review. So that's why I decided to delay it to tomorrow. But first, I'm going to do the preview of the weekend games, and I'm going to try to do this as fast as I could because there's actually going to be 3 games going to be happening on 4th of July, and that I want to do this as quick as possible so that I can, of course, watch those games that starts at 6 o'clock. So without further ado, let's actually begin the first game, which is Philly. They take on Orlando City, and if this matchup sounds very familiar to you, then you're not wrong because both of these teams just face each other back on Wednesday, and that Philly, of course, coming into this game with a 10-5-5 record, while Orlando City coming into this game with a 6-3-9 record, and that they, of course, won that meeting between them and Orlando City just 3 days ago. And by the way, since I am doing the preview and that I'm going to kind of in some way spoil some of the resort that I will mention in the review. So if you, of course, watch the preview, you will most likely know what happened in most of the games that ended yesterday, and that it's going to be a little bit repetitive tomorrow when I do the review of the 10 games that happened in the 4th of July midweek action. But Philly, of course, won that game. They won 3-1 against Orlando City in that game, and Orlando City had 2 men sent off in that game. And in terms of injury and suspension for Philly, Crivell, Mabazo are guys that's going to be out. Questionable for this game is going to be Marco Fabian, and Lina will be questionable for the Union. For Orlando City, Higuita is going to be out for this game, and the guy that's going to be questionable coming into this game is going to be John Matinho. But as I mentioned, with the fact that Orlando City got 2 red cards in that game on Wednesday against Philly, those 2 guys that got red cards was Janssen and Kleshton, so they will not be available in this game. And the Union definitely looked good in that game against Orlando City, and this is the thing I say about Orlando City being a team that, they can have their good moments, and then they can have their bad moments, and that game when they play against Philly was the game that they had that bad moment. So, the Union, certainly they want to make it 2 out of 2, but obviously, beating a team twice is definitely not easy, and beating a team twice in a span of 3 days is definitely not easy and definitely much harder, because I'm pretty sure now Orlando City has a book on the Union and know what exactly they're going to do, and that they'll just learn from their mistake, and then of course able to maybe get a resort from Philly. Although the Union has been very good at home. Well, they've been okay at home. They've definitely been much better on the road this season and one of the best road team in the league, but we'll see how this is going to go. We'll see if Orlando City is going to get something out of this, or they will, of course, be swept by Philly in this season series. But moving on into the next match is Houston. So the Dynamo got a much-needed victory in the last game against the Red Bulls 4-0, and now they are back on the road to play against the worst team in the league, that is FC Cincinnati, who has a record of 3-2-13. Houston, of course, have a record of 8-3-16, or 8-3-6. Sorry. FC Cincinnati, of course, as I mentioned, worst record in MLS. Houston, of course, won 4-0 against the Red Bulls at home. In terms of injuries and suspension for FC Cincinnati, McLaughlin, Garza, and Lamar are still out for them. Questionable in this game is going to be Fernando Adi and Fatai Alashe. For Houston, Bird and Memo Rodriguez is going to be out for this game. And questionable in this game, and thank goodness this is actually questionable, is DeMarcus Beasley, because I was very worried when he suffered that injury against New England that it could be another long injury that's going to keep him out of the playing field on his farewell season, like what happened earlier this season. But it looks like he could be back in this game. And the only guy that is going to be suspended for Houston is going to be Mino Figueroa, who picked up a red card in that 4-0 win against Houston. And, for the Dynamo, this is a big chance for them to get 3 points. We know they're not good on the road. It's been proven this season when they haven't really won a lot of games or have got a lot of result on the road. But when you're playing against the worst team in the league, and if you cannot get points against the worst team in the league, or even get all 3 points against them, then yeah, I do have a lot of concern about this Dynamo team because, you got to eventually win some road games and that get some points on the road to kind of put a little bit pressure off of their home record. And Houston home record has been pretty decent this season, but there's other times where they have looked a little bit shaky at home. And knowing the fact that, this is a game that is a good opportunity to, of course, put a little bit pressure off of their home form, and also the fact that they need to keep pace against a very tight Western Conference, and all of a sudden very tight Western Conference where the team that is currently in 4th to 8th place and even to 9th place is only separated by just 2 points right now, and separated by 4 points if you go to 9th place, which is where the Timbers are occupied. But the Timbers have 2 games in hand pretty much over everybody that is above them all the way up into 4th place. So yeah, they are definitely in a dogfight to try to get those precious playoff spot. And if they want to, of course, get those precious playoff spot and keep pace with teams, they have to win this game against FC Cincinnati. And there's no disrespect to FC Cincinnati of saying that they are just really bad, but the fact is, everybody has been able to beat FC Cincinnati. All but 2 teams, all but 3 teams have been able to be successful, or all but 5 teams that hasn't been successful to get a win against FC Cincinnati out of the 18 games that we have played so far. So yeah, for Houston, this is a big game for them, and that you would expect this is one of those games that they got to get 3 points on the road. But having said that, moving on into the next match, and speaking of a team that definitely wants 3 points on the road, is Seattle, who of course lost that last game against NYCFC 3-0. Although in that game, Brian Schmetzer surprisingly decided to rotate his squad a little bit, despite the fact that it was going to be a big game against NYCFC, and that I don't think it was a great idea to decide to do squad rotation against the hottest team in the league right now. And of course that backfired in that game as they lost 3-0, and the record is now at 8-5-5. While Columbus, alongside with FC Cincinnati, are one of the worst teams in the league. They of course now lost 4 in a row, and their record is a dismal 5-2-12 record. Injuries and suspension for Columbus: Valenzuela, Higuain, Williams, and Akam are all out of this game. So some of their key pieces on the attack is going to be out for this game. While for Seattle, Will Bruin is the only guy that's going to be out, with Rodriguez being questionable. But Rui Diaz and Morris is still out with this team because of international duty. Rui Diaz, of course, part of the Peru team that made it to the Copa America final, while Morris is part of the U.S. team that made it to the Gold Cup final this year. So, yeah, for Seattle, certainly I know that they are a little bit depleted. And I said that in the last game, I think they will have Ladero back in the starting 11. And I'm pretty sure this game, they most likely will have him back in the starting 11. And that, that will be huge for them, because they will get a little bit of that star power attack that they have back in this game. And that, they're facing a Columbus team that is just in a downward spiral. This is bad for Columbus with the way that things have gone. And I just think that they are pretty much done this season in terms of their chances of making the playoffs. So for the Sounders, big chance for them to get all 3 points against a Columbus team that is really struggling right now. But moving on into the next match is Minnesota. So Minnesota is now all the way up to 4th place in the Western Conference, and that is the highest that they have ever gone in their franchise history in MLS. Their record is now 8-3-7, while they're playing against a Montreal team that has a record of 9-3-8. Montreal, of course, lost 2-1 against Atlanta away, while Minnesota, of course, won 3-1 against the Quakes at home. A massive victory for Minnesota, who want to be one of those teams that is going to be making the playoffs for the first time in their MLS history. Injuries and suspension, there isn't a lot for both of these teams, but for Montreal, the key injury key player that's going to be out for this game is going to be Piatti and Beja. For Minnesota, the only player that's going to be out is Denladi. Questionable is going to be Colin Martins. And yeah, this is definitely a big game, another big game for Minnesota. And I'm not sure, do I want to say it's necessary, a must-win game for Minnesota, because one, they're going on the road, which I know for a fact that Minnesota is a team that do not do well on the road. Like, despite the fact that they did well early in the season on the road, lately they are kind of start showing their road form, and that they just cannot get anything on the road, which I am a little bit concerned about that, with Minnesota not able to get road wins. But having said that, they've been so good at Allianz Field, maybe that is something that I'm not that nervous about them being not really doing very very well on the road. But they're playing against a Montreal team that has been very good at home. They have a record of 9-3-8. Montreal, of course, did lose 2-1 to Atlanta, and it was a game that they tried to bunker, and it looked like they were very successful. Unfortunately, there was a guy by the name of Justin Miram decided to put on a show against Montreal, and that is really the difference between them losing that one. And certainly, hopefully they can come back into this game and able to get a victory against Minnesota. I mean, Montreal, so far, most of these games that they have won have not been pretty, but they've been very effective whenever they of course win these games, and whenever they of course face against an opponent. Not only they're very good in terms of defending, but they always score timely goals so that they can of course get all 3 points in a game. So this could be a one that they could do the same thing against Minnesota, that hasn't been very good on the road but has been red hot lately. So yeah, we shall see how this game is gonna go. Yeah, moving on. Sporting KC, they play against Chicago in this game, and both of these teams are actually coming off of a 5-1 result in the 4th of July midweek action. But both of these teams suffer different kind of circumstances in terms of their 5-1 result. For SKC, they lost 5-1 to LAFC at home, and their record is now at 4-7-7. While Chicago, they won 5-1 against Atlanta, and their record is now 5-7-7. And in terms of the injuries and suspension, Hurtado, Lindsay, Wallace, and Espinoza is out for SKC, while for guys that is going to be questionable for Sporting KC, Madrana, Russo, and Zuzi, and Baraf are all guys that is going to be questionable in this game. Yeah, SKC is one of the most injury-riddled team in MLS, and you can clearly tell on the board that they are suffering so many injuries right now. Although they're trying their best in terms of getting health fear heading into the second half of this season. And for Chicago, the only guy that is going to be questionable is going to be Kapelhoff. And for SKC, this is a game that they have to win. Like, they're getting to a phase where I am a little bit concerned that they are kind of like TFC of last season, where they had a good CCL run, and then the next thing you know, they start to suffer injuries and they never recover from it. SKC has started to really get into that stage, and they are started to fall behind in terms of the race to trying to get above the red line. Like, they're now 6 points behind the nearest team that is above the red line, which is not RSL but FC Dallas, who is currently in 7th place. Or actually, it might be RSL that is currently in 7th place right now. So if they don't win against Chicago, they could definitely fall even more behind, and it's getting to a point where, yeah, I am really nervous. The fact that this could be one of the few seasons where SKC is not going to make the playoffs, which I don't even remember the last time Sporting KC have not made the playoffs. While for Chicago, again, I mean, I don't know what kind of Chicago team would do. And this is why the resort, when they won 5-1 against Atlanta, as much as it really shocked a lot of people, in some way, I'm kind of not surprised because this is what Chicago can do. They have the talent to, of course, able to run over a team, but they just don't show it and they don't do it consistently every single game. And yes, obviously, I know most of the team in the league, if you're not named LAFC, can't really always just consistently put in good shift. But this team just seems like one game they look like the best team in the league, and then the next game they look like the worst team in the league. So it all depends on which kind of Chicago team would face against SKC. If it's the one that beat Atlanta United 5-1, yeah, they will win this one easily. But if it's the team that was before when they faced Atlanta United that were in a 5-game winless run, then yeah, they'll probably lose this one against Sporting KC. So yeah, I'm just going to say it that any game that involves Chicago in it is just so unpredictable and that you don't know exactly if this team is going to win or is the opposition team is going to win. But that being said, moving on into the last game on this board before I'm switching the boards is LAFC, who of course bounced back during the 4th of July weekend or 4th of July midweek game when they won 5-1 against SKC away, as I mentioned just a couple of seconds ago. Their record is now at 12-4-2. Although they're playing against a Vancouver team that has a record of 4-8-7, and that even though they did lose 1-0 in that heartbreaking loss against Seattle, this was one of the teams that beat LAFC earlier this season. Now, injuries and suspension for LAFC, Silva and Perez is going to be out, and questionable for LAFC, Guido and Perez is going to be questionable in this game. Well, for Vancouver, Kimeri, Norman Jr., Aaron Diaz, and Hassel is going to be questionable, or not questionable, but going to be out for this game for the Whitecaps. And like I said, the Whitecaps are one of those teams that beat LAFC, although this time they have to go on the road to play against LAFC, which we know for a fact that not a lot of teams can actually get a win at home on the road against LAFC. Like, LAFC has just had an incredible home record. I don't think they even lost once this season so far. So, yeah, this is going to be a tough order for the Whitecaps to repeat what they did earlier in the season against LAFC. And I'm pretty sure LAFC know what happened earlier this season. And they definitely want some revenge against the Whitecaps of what happened earlier this season that ended their unbeaten run in the start of the season. But that being said, let's move on into the next game. And actually, before I move on to the next game, I'm going to now switch the board to look at the last 3 games of this weekend action. But yeah, next up, it's the Quakes. So they play against RSL in this game with a record of 8-2-2, while the Quakes have a record of 7-4-7. The Quakes, of course, lost 3-1 to Minnesota away, while RSL won 1-0 to Columbus at home. The only player that is injured for the Quakes is Anibal Godoy. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks. And for RSL, the only player that's going to be out for this game is going to be Allen, with Beltran being questionable in this game. And this is a must-win for the Quakes. I know we're in July, and I know the fact that we still have a lot of season left, but you just have a sense that this is kind of a must-win for the Quakes, considering the fact that, if this team is going to make the playoffs, this is type of the game that they have to win against a team that they are probably going to be fighting for that last spot in the playoffs, or fighting for those 4 spots in the playoffs right now in the Western Conference. This is a game that they have to win. And I know that this is the 4th game in 10 days for the Quakes, and that they are probably going to be very exhausted after coming into this game. I mean, they look exhausted when they were playing away against Minnesota, especially in the first half, where the attack was just very slow, and eventually it did pick up in the second half, but I'm just worried that it can happen again here in this game against RSL, and I hope oh, bless you there. I hope it just doesn't happen in this game. On top of that, RSL is not good on the road. Like, while RSL has won their last 2 games, they were both at home. When they go on the road, they are a different animal, and that it's not in a very dangerous way. I mean, they are not a very good team on the road, so you are expecting the Quakes should win this. Like, I really think that this could be a game that could maybe be the difference between us making the playoffs or not. And I know throughout the season I've been skeptical of the Quakes are making the playoffs or not, and I'm still skeptical right now partially because of what happened in Minnesota where we lost that one, and the fact that it's so tight right now in the Western Conference, and that there's just no margin for error for the Quakes to make. And especially if you look at after this game, they got some tough games coming up too. You know, they have to play against the Galaxy away, play against Vancouver away, and then come home against a red-hot Colorado team. So there's no margin for error for the Quakes to do in this game, and that they cannot afford to get anything but a win in this game, and I hope that that is the case in this one. But moving on into the next match, and it's the match that is basically the game of the week and the match of the week and the match that I'm pretty sure a lot of people has been waiting for to happen. Like, ever since what happened back in April, I believe, or May, when Atlanta and the Red Bulls play each other, and the drama that happened at the end. Yeah, a lot of people are saying more of this, please. I cannot wait for chapter 2 of this kind of rivalry that Atlanta and the Red Bulls are kind of developing. And here we are. We are going to get this rivalry in this weekend, as Atlanta, they have a record of 9-2-7, while the Red Bulls have a record of 8-3-7. Now, both of these teams are definitely not coming into this game all guns blazing. In fact, both of these teams suffer some embarrassing loss this coming into this huge class, and I'm guessing both of these teams kind of fell through the trap that they had in the midweek games, where, you know, even though I didn't mention though when Atlanta played Chicago was kind of a trap game for Atlanta, and the same thing with the Red Bulls playing Houston was kind of a trap game. Yeah, it was a trap game, and they fell through the trap of that. And for Atlanta, they lost 5-1 against Chicago away, and they also had a man sent off, while the Red Bulls lost 4-0 to Houston away, and they also had a man sent off. And in fact, they didn't have a man sent off, they had 2 men sent off, and that does make a bit of an impact in terms of this game. Injuries and suspension. George Bello, Villalba, Kratz, and Barco is still out for Atlanta coming into this game, while Gonzalo Perez is going to be suspended in this game because he picked up the red card in the last game, which is kind of unfortunate because, as much as, you know, I don't think it's a big loss for Atlanta. I think that they definitely have depth in terms of that center back, and I'm assuming they'll probably put Pogba in there as their center back in this game. But it's a little bit unfortunate that he's out, because he was kind of the center of the attention in the last game. I mean, you guys remember the Kamar Lawrence and Gonzalo Perez kind of incident? Yeah. It's a bit unfortunate that Gonzalo Perez won't be available in this game, and it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen between both of them on this pitch. But we'll never find out because Gonzalo Perez is suspended in this game. Well, for the Red Bulls, Valet is going to be out. Tim Parker is doubtful, and I actually didn't put in terms of a suspension. For the Red Bulls, they have 2 players that's going to be suspended, and those 2 players is going to be Michael Morello and Kaku, and those are huge missing pieces for them. Kaku, obviously, a very good attacker and a very influenced attacker for the Red Bulls, while Morello, very good in terms of a very good piece in terms of the defense of this Red Bull. So yeah, that is 2 very big pieces that they are going to miss in this game. But still, at the end of the day, this should be a heck of a game, and I'm pretty sure Atlanta wants revenge for what happened earlier this season, and they definitely want to bounce back after suffering probably the worst loss that they have ever suffered in MLS so far. Like, I think 5-1 is the worst loss they have. I remember last year they suffered a 4-0 loss in the beginning of the season against Houston, but this was as ugly as it gets. While the Red Bulls, you know, yeah, they suffer that embarrassing loss to Houston. Now let's see if they can, of course, bounce back, and they have to go on the road against Atlanta, which is a team that they have beaten before on the road against Atlanta, like minus the 3-0 loss that they suffer in the playoffs last season when the Red Bulls and Atlanta plays in the playoffs. The Red Bulls have had a good record against Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so You know, I don't want to say that this should be an easy win for Atlanta considering they're at home and they have good home field advantage when they're playing a Red Bulls team that, you know, they definitely want to also try to get a win after suffering that embarrassing loss this midweek. But having said that, moving on into the final game of this weekend is another big one between NYCFC versus Portland. NYCFC have a 7-8-1 record, while Portland has a 6-2-8 record. NYCFC, of course, won 3-0 against Seattle at home, while Portland won 1-0 against Dallas at home. NYCFC, for the players that's going to be out, Skelly, Sands, Rocher, and Aber are all out for NYCFC. While for Portland, Tuoluma is the only guy that's going to be out. Questionable, McInston, Valentin Blanco, and also Paredes are all questionable in this game. And, you know, this is another one of those big games and certainly another of those kind of marquee matchup when you have both teams that are definitely good team. I know Portland is currently below the red line, but don't let this fool you, the fact that this is one of the most dangerous team in the league. And the question for Portland, you know, is that can they sustain what they did last time when they, of course, well, actually, the question for Portland is that can they play a little bit better than what they did against FC Dallas? I almost said can they sustain that victory against Dallas when that was the game where they really struggled in that game against Dallas. And now they're playing against an NYCFC team that has the longest unbeaten streak, and that this unbeaten streak could be on the line against the Timbers. Although we know NYCFC lately has just been red hot. They have just pretty much brush people aside, and I think it is also start times that people are started paying attention to a little bit to NYCFC because, as I mentioned, this team has been very underrated and been flying under the radar for a bit, considering the fact that they're the only team with only 1 losses, and that not a lot of people mention of the fact that they have been unbeaten in a very long time. And I'm guessing maybe it's because of the amount of draws that they have. But recently, it feels like they're not really drawing game anymore, and instead of just drawing games, they're winning those games. So yeah, this is a team that people need to really keep an eye on, and that this team could definitely rise up in the table of the Eastern Conference. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for all the games that I have previewed it. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these games, and what do you think is the game that you're going to most likely watch. Most likely it's going to be this one between Atlanta and the Red Bulls, but let me know in the comments below which game you're going to keep a close eye on, and also leave your prediction below in the comments of what's going to happen in these 9 games and the prediction for these 9 games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.